What is the latest with Harden?
So let me just real quick take you back to a year ago. A year ago, James Harden actually had this exact same situation. He was in a contract. He could have opted in and stayed 1 year or more on his deal, or he could have opted out and become a free agent. In that particular case, he was working alongside the Sixers for days. So much so that the Sixers were later dinged and fined draft picks for tampering, because as he was negotiating with the Sixers to opt out of his contract and reduce his salary, they were bringing in PJ Tucker, who was a free agent from the Miami Heat, and that was all set up. And by the time we got to June 30th, it was all great. This year, it was completely different.
Yes.
They weren't setting this up for him. He wasn't a part of the process. And as he got towards the deadline, he realized, I don't have a good feel for what my situation is going to be. And so instead of opting out, knowing what he was going to get, he opted in. And I know it's counterintuitive that a player who's opting into his contract would actually want to leave with the team. But that is essentially what he has done here. Because if he had become an open free agent, there's only a couple of teams that really could afford him. And if he had to go to a team that didn't have salary cap space, then he would have had to force a sign and trade, and you need the Sixers to cooperate, which they wouldn't necessarily have to do. So what he's done here is he's tried to, first off, guarantee himself $36 million, which he wasn't sure because the Sixers weren't engaging with him like they were a year ago. And he also is able to try to direct himself to teams that couldn't have signed him outright, namely the LA Clippers. There could be some other teams that enter the fray here, especially as we see how things develop over the next 3 to 5 days and free agency plays out. But he is now going to basically turn his back on the Sixers, the team that he was arm in arm with just a year ago, with Daryl Morey, the guy who he's been with for almost a decade now. That is all breaking up, and it's because basically he didn't like what his hand was in the open free agency market. And so now we have a circus. We have the Clippers interested. We have the Knicks possibly interested. What is Dame Lillard's situation in all this? And if he asks for a trade in the next few days, do the Sixers try to get in on that? What about Kyrie Irving? All of a sudden, things become interesting in the point guard market with him. Can he somehow create a market in the same way? And now this is what we get in free agency every year, it seems.
I feel like you've just displayed the entire menu of the journey we're about to embark on with this show. But Nick, where do you feel like is the best fit for Harden?
All I know, Victoria, is that Harden is going through more bad breakups than I am.
Wow. Really?
I mean, Harden's arm in arm with all these teams, and everybody's feeling great.
I feel like right now, so Nick Friedell, tell me about your childhood. Is that where we
childhood? It's the last 5 years, Freddie. Everything's good. Everything's looking good.
And then it just boom.
That got personal. That got really personal.
Wow, this escalated in the first 5 minutes.
So I understand what Harden is living, but when you get those teams, enough of these teams that go, I don't know if this is going to work. Maybe it's time to look in the mirror. I mean, I'm trying to. You lose a little weight over the summer. You get yourself in a better place. But as far as the best place for him right now, Victoria, probably is the Clippers. Because as far as a hierarchy of a team goes, Harden isn't the second guy on a title team anymore. He's the third guy. So if you have Kawhi and you have Paul George, and then you can have Harden and you're not relying on him to be the guy every single night like we saw in the past with Houston, that's a great place. But who in the world can sit there looking at that Clipper team and go, you know what I think's going to happen? I think Kawhi and Paul George and James Harden are all going to be healthy at the same time. They're all going to be motivated all at the same time, and everything's going to come together, and they're going to win a title. There's only one person who thinks that. It's a bald man in Los Angeles who goes, let's go Clippers! Let's do it! And it's Steve Ballmer. And he is living in an alternate universe if he actually believes that after all these years, that's going to work.
Well, this bald man in New York was thoroughly entertained by Nick Friedell's story time. Who needs NBA free agency at 6 o'clock? We got Nick Friedell right after 10 o'clock Eastern time giving us story time. We went to Loveland with Nick Friedell, and nobody thought that was coming. But when it comes to Loveland, here's the problem with James Harden. The one team that makes the best fit is James Harden's team, and that's the problem. And you said before we came out here, Nick Friedell said, oh, God, the 76ers. I said every Philadelphia fan is saying that right now because they probably thought, you know what, even if we can't trust this guy in the playoffs, at least he has a relationship with Daryl Morey that he wants to be here. He wants to try to make this work. And Wendy even said it best, not even 1 year later, 365 days later, it's back on James Harden carousel because James Harden wants to win, but he wants to win on his terms. He wants to be the guy, but he has never been the guy that you can trust to win a championship. So all of a sudden now, when he gave us the whole soft shoe routine, the dog and pony show that I'm here to be with Joel Embiid and I'm going to win it. Me and Daryl Morey talked about what can we do better to make this work. And 1 year later, James Harden went back to Team James Harden. So I'm with you that the Clippers right now seem to be the best fit because he's an LA kid. He grew up in Los Angeles. He would love nothing better to go back to his hometown, even if it's not to play for the Lakers, but try to make that work for the Clippers and the wild ball man of Los Angeles, like you said when it comes to Steve Ballmer. But let's be honest, the best fit for James Harden has been Team James Harden. We bust on Kyrie Irving all the time for being selfish. That dude has been more selfish than Kyrie Irving because it's always been about him. And anytime things get bad, when things get wonky, he bails.
He's gone.
He did it in Houston and left the scorched earth. He did it in Brooklyn because it wasn't to his liking. And now everything is finally set up for James Harden to be a championship player. You can be a Scottie Pippen to a Michael Jordan and Joel Embiid. Nope. James Harden, Team Harden won out. So if you get in bed with this guy, the Los Angeles Clippers, and you wake up with bed bites, don't blame anybody. Don't blame Nick Friedell. Don't blame Brian Windhorst. Don't blame me. Because this is what this guy has done. It's been about Team Harden, not about Team anybody else.
After that Harden decision last night, Damian Lillard picked up his phone and tweeted this cryptic tweet saying, survived too many storms to be bothered by raindrops. So, Wendy, what does this response mean to you?
Well, I'm not going to guess exactly what he's saying, but I think he's acknowledging he knows he's involved in this.
Yeah.
Because he knows that if Philly decides to try to target him, they can make a move with the Clippers or somebody else, pick up some assets that would be interesting to Portland, and then try to get him.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing that the whole league is watching is Dame Lillard going to ask for a trade? He met with the team on Monday in Portland. He elected at that time not to press it. He elected to stay back and watch them do their moves here in early free agency. Does that mean that he's staying? Does that mean that he will wait and see and choose? Philadelphia could potentially offer a very compelling package for Dame Lillard because of the teams that we think that have interest in him, namely the Miami Heat, potentially the Brooklyn Nets, potentially the New York Knicks. The idea of including Tyrese Maxey for a trade there, especially the way he would fit alongside Scoot Henderson in that future, would be very compelling to Portland if they need to go that route. But maybe Dame prefers to go in a place like Miami. When he name dropped those teams on the podcast with Brian Custer, I don't remember Philly being at the top of the list. So how that Dame is aware that his name is now going to be attached to the way this Portland thing or this Harden thing plays out.
What about you, Nick? What do you think of this response, this cryptic tweet?
Well, as a veteran of the breakup game, Victoria,
Oh my God.
I mean,
Is that the
we're just waiting. We're just waiting for the end here. If Dame wanted to stay in Portland and it was as strong as he always has stated he has been about wanting to be there his entire career, he can end this in 2 seconds. Yeah. One tweet. Hey, everybody. I am in Portland. This is where I want to be. This is the only jersey I ever want to wear. He's not doing that. He's putting out raindrop tweets, and
it does rain a lot there.
I mean, yeah, and that's not going to change.
Yeah.
Right.
So if he really wants to win a title, though, he's got to make the decision right now. The Blazers are not very good. They've got Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharpe and some nice young pieces. They're not only not good now, they're not going to be good in a couple of years. It's going to take a while. Dame Lillard is right in the middle of his prime. The Heat would be a perfect basketball fit for him. Philadelphia would be a good fit, but you wonder how much they'd have to give up potentially in a deal to get him. But if Dame Lillard was serious about staying there and being the guy and never leaving, he can end it today, right now, and he's not. And he's watching to see what's going to happen. I'm here to tell you, Dame, the Blazers are not good. And that's not going to change no matter how many different ways you watch the front office try to make moves. So if he wants to win, we're going to find out this summer. And if he wants to win, he's got to get out of Portland.
It can't be easy being Damian Lillard because my heart says that he wants to stay there, but my gut is telling me that he understands exactly what the NBA landscape looks like. And I don't think we need adults in the room here with Damian Lillard and the Portland Trail Blazers. both entities are clearly understanding exactly what the future could possibly hold, what it seems likely, what it's going to be. So he can put out all the cryptic tweets he wants. He clearly knows that the end is near for me in Portland. He wants to stay and win a championship in Portland because that city, that organization embraced him and believed in him when nobody else did. When he's drafted out of Weber State, people say, why are they drafting this kid from Oaktown, California? And from Weber State, man, we need a dog. They wound up getting one in 11 years, a 9-time All-Star, what he was able to do, and average a career high over 32 points per game this year for the Portland Trail Blazers. He has never, ever given up on that city. He has never, ever given up on that organization. So it gets emotional, but you got to take emotions out of this. If Damian Lillard, to your point, Nick, and to your point, Wendy, is really serious about winning a championship, he doesn't worry about forcing a trade. Just let Portland do that. But the more you keep waffling and going back and forth, and people are going to question, okay, Damian, what do you really want? If you want to stay there, like you said, Nick, then say it. Just come out loud and say, guys, I don't want to go anywhere. I want to win it here. If you want to be traded or you want them to work out a deal, then you just sit back and let Portland handle it. And then your people talk to my people, we'll get it done. That's the conundrum with Damian Lillard. He wants to win a championship in Portland, but he knows it's practically impossible to do that when it comes to modern NBA, modern basketball, and modern economics.
For sure. And I think the big challenge here for Portland is how they can try to walk the line. Like, they have a free agent today that they would want to retain in Jeremy Grant. That's a guy who's going to demand a contract.
He can play, man.
That's a 9-figure contract type of situation there. So they have to kind of know whether Dame is fully invested in or not. And they have been, their general manager, Joe Cronin, has been on the record saying, we don't want to trade him. We want to keep him. But their actions are not following with what Dame has set out, which is to get veteran players. So we'll keep an eye on the way that moves. The other thing is, I do think there's a Kyrie Irving aspect here. Kyrie and James Harden have the same challenge, which is there's not a market for them. I think there are teams that want them, but those teams don't have salary cap space or don't potentially have the ability to sign and trade for him. So will Kyrie try to investigate this market? The problem is that I don't think Philadelphia is moving on that timeline. Philadelphia will move on whatever timeline it needs to, even if that takes months. But Kyrie is trying to get a market. You know how we know that?
Because he's Kyrie Irving.
Because he's going out there and trying to do meetings with teams that have no chance to acquire him. Mm-hmm. He's like the Suns. He's trying to have these meetings because he's trying to set the idea that he could go someplace else. And Dallas probably isn't really moved by that, just like Philadelphia wasn't moved enough to worry about Harden leaving in free agency.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.